video is a continuation to the previous video on the SQL introduction. So let me go through it. So most of the time in interview it is asked that why we should go with the SQL. We already have a no SQL programming paradigms like MongoDB and all. So why we should go with the SQL? But still there are many projects in which we use SQL. There are multiple reasons. One of the reason is it allows user to access the data in relational database management system. So if you have seen my previous video, in that I have talked about that we have various models like relational, object oriented. So in interview they could ask about like what are the different models in database. So we can tell it any one or two, like object oriented, relational, as well as tree based, and one more is structural. So SQL, it can ask about SQL. So every models, whether it's an object oriented, whether it's a no SQL, or whether it's a relational, every models, every part of database have its own importance. Okay, so when we are talking about a relational management data system, so why SQL? So first we need to tell that it allows users to access the data in relational database management system. So we have already seen what does a relationship means. Allows user to describe the data, allows user to define the data and manipulate the data. It's very easy. We can define our own structure. We can decide our own structure in what way we want to store and where we want to store our data, and we can manipulate it. Even we can create, we can drop databases. This all is a very basic overview. These are not, it will not be asked, but if it is asked why SQL, then we need to tell it's a relational. It allows user to create, drop tables, databases. It allows user to have multiple permissions on the tables. Some user can read it, some user can write it. Even in views and procedures, in interview it is asked about, do we have an access permissions on views and SP? Yes, we provide access permissions on views and SP. If a person has given a write access to a view, he will be able to write as well as read both. But if a person is given a read access, he can only read the views and SP, he can't manipulate it. Not he can alter the SP, nor he can create an SP. He can only execute those SPs. Now we will go through properties of relational databases. Now, first point, when it is asked that why you should go with SQL, we should also tell that there are certain points which a relational database have. That is ACID. ACID means atomicity, consistency, integrity, and so what was the last one? Durability. These are isolation. So atomicity means ensure that data operation is complete, and if it's a success, then it will be a success. If it's a failure, then it will be in failure state. In SQL, if you have some previous knowledge on SQL, then you would be knowing that in a SQL we have a rollback, as well as we have a rollback transaction. We have a commit transactions. So rollback transaction means that whenever in any mid your process got failed, none of the operations should work. That we call as a rollback transaction. For example, if you are transferring some amount from one bank to another, and between that uh, person is debited with one my account, but it has not credited it another account. So in that case, whole rollback will be there. The person's amount from whom it is being debited will not be debited, and credited, that would also not be happening. So that is a very good example why we sometimes most of the project use relational databases to ensure the atomicity. And when we write SPs and view, we make sure that we use those commands like rollback, commit, begin transaction, close transaction. So there are certain commands which we will be dealing with. Now, consistency, if we perform any operations, the value before and after operation should be preserved. For example, the account balance before and after transaction should be correct and it should be confirmed. It's that only. Consistency is a dependent of atomicity. So if two people trying to access same thing, there should be a consistency. For example, one person did, then second person did. It should not be that one person also deducted, second person also deducted. Means it should be in consistent way. Isolation. See, there can be a concurrent users who accessing the data at the same time in the database. The isolation between the data should be there. Isolation means the effect should be visible in the DB. It should not be like one person view one part of DB, other person view another part of DB. That is we call as an isolation. Then durability ensure that it completes the operation. That means it commits the data and changes should be permanent. Then what else? This is not needed, but if you want, you can go through it. SQL queries all related to that. Then data types. In SQL, every column, local variable, expression, parameters have some data types. What type of data types? Integer, character, date, time. So when you create a structure of your tables, you need to specify those integer, character, date, time, binary strings, etc. So let me go through data types in SQL. SQL data types are binary, numeric, exact numeric, string, date data type. So if you go through the description, binary, maximum 8,000 bytes. Binary means 1 and 0. Then var binary means variable, binary, images. Yeah, in database, we store the images also in the var binary format, zeros and ones. Then numeric, we have a float and real. That you can go through that. That's not much about it. Just float values and real values. Once you set, then you can store the values. Integer, int, small int, bit, decimal, numeric. Char, var char means variable char. When you specify size, like suppose we have a character in in SQL, we provide the size, like how many characters it can store in the brackets. Okay, suppose I provided 20. So most of the time we should use varchar. Varchar, if in varchar, if suppose the size is not used in char, like there are 12, but you used only once. So your space, that particular space will get wasted. Okay, when you provide data type to any variable structure, it create those memories. So whenever you insert, that memory get allocated to store that specific value. So when we go with varchar, the rest extra space will not get allocated. So varchar means that whatever is needed, it will occupy that. Rest others it will not occupy. Then we have a date time. We have a date. We have a time. We have a timestamp. These all are very see, additional data types are these, which I already told you: date, time, image, table. Yeah, we have a table data type also in DB, like temporary tables, which we can say it. You see this varchar max. Varchar max means the maximum value. When you store JSON, big complex JSON, size of JSON is very big. So how some of the people won't know what is JSON. JSON looks like this. Just showing you. JSON look like this. You have a name value pair. You can see JSON. You can Google it and you can see it. In JSON, we basically get name and value pair. Suppose curly braces, sorry. Curly braces, suppose name, colon, name, A, B, C. So this is called a JSON. This we call as a JSON. So this is very simple JSON. We would have a lot of thousand lakhs of JSON, big structure, huge JSON. So in that way, we use varchar max to store your JSON structure. Then we have a text var binary. We use var binary to store. Sometimes we use var binary to store the images, like pixels and all in that way. These were additional data types. Now, difference between important dates. This all you can view through. What is difference between small date time? What is date time 2? What is date time offset? What is date? What is time? So these all have its own importance. Most of the time we use date time function, but when you need only time, then you go with the time. time storage, but most of the time we use date time or date time. Then we have T-SQL. T-SQL will take to you in next session. Thank you for listening to this session.